everyone, I'm Matt, and welcome to the Good Trouble Show. So today's bombshell article by Michael Shellenberger in Public News titled, quote, Pentagon is illegally hiding UFO program from Congress. Whistleblowers allege new government whistleblowers reveals for the first time the name of the Unacknowledged Special Access Program, or USAP, for unidentified anomalous phenomena. So this whole thing is literally set off a firestorm as a new whistleblower has come forward exposing the illegal UAP UFO Unacknowledged Special Access Program, and trust me, there's more than one, by the name of Immaculate Constellation. Now, once again, the Pentagon has been caught red-handed, lying to the American public and Congress. But hey, you know what? This is nothing new. This is what the Pentagon does. This is what the CIA does. They lie, they bold-faced lie to the American people and to Congress. This is absolutely ridiculous. It flies in the face of our democracy. Today, two attorneys will join us to discuss these revelations, the illegality of the Pentagon program, whistleblower protections, and how these programs are classified in the Pentagon and the Department of Energy. But first, please hit the subscribe and thumbs up buttons on YouTube. Leave a comment and let us know what you think about this episode. You can also find us on X at Good Trouble Show and all other social media platforms at The Good Trouble Show. You can also find us wherever you enjoy your podcast. Search for The Good Trouble Show with Matt Ford. And if you would like to chip in to keep the lights on, you can, of course, become a Patreon member of The Good Trouble Show by going to www.patreon.com/The Good Trouble Show and sign up, support our show from anywhere for just the price of a coffee, or if you want to buy the whole Starbucks store, or actually we support mom and pop operations, so we'd much rather you do that. Anyway, so on with the show. Our guests, next two guests today are two high-powered attorneys tackling the legal issues surrounding the illegal UAP Special Access Programs and providing legal counsel for UAP whistleblowers and anyone really kind of related to this field. Please welcome on your left, Lue Elizondo's public attorney. Again, Lue Elizondo's public attorney, Ivan Hannell. I always mispronounce your name. Is it Hannell or Hannell?
You know what? Growing up, it's interchangeable. It's fine. I think it's probably Hannel.
Okay.
But, yeah, Ivan Hannell.
Okay, great. And he's also chief counsel for UAP Disclosure Fund. And then on your right, the executive director of the Disclosure Advocacy Group, attorney Hunt Willis. So firstly, I want to find out a little bit more about UAP, UAP Disclosure Advocacy Group. Tell us a little bit about that.
Hunt. Go ahead, Hunt.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Matt. We appreciate it. Thanks for having us on. It's good to be here. I think I would describe this group as a group of very like-minded attorneys who've come together across a bunch of different jurisdictions in the United States to address what appears to be a lack of legal community representation in the discussion on this topic, right? So one of the things that we've seen lately is a great organization by the scientific community and the academic community on the topic. We've seen a really good organization politically by different advocacy groups getting involved in what is essentially the campaigning of information on this topic. What appeared to really be missing is, where the hell are the lawyers? A lot of us thought, I think collectively, but perhaps ignorantly, that there was some group, of attorneys from various backgrounds that were sort of assisting with this topic in whatever that may be, whether it's from a public-facing advocacy group, private counseling for individuals. And what I think we discovered was that there wasn't. And so one of the aims of this nonprofit is to organize attorneys of all kinds of disciplines across the United States that are willing to assist either publicly or privately with moving, the needle on this topic in a public advocacy sort of way. So.
Great. And Ivan, you're involved in this as well and you're also, of course, with UAP Disclosure Fund. Tell us a bit about that, please.
Thanks, Matt. When we formed the Disclosure Advocacy Group, just like Hunt put it so perfectly, it's to fill a need and, for representation for whistleblowers, advocacy generally, doing the substantive legal work. And I think what was really missing wasn't just, and wasn't just public advocacy in the form of podcasts, but it's actually bringing sort of, the tip of the spear to the issue. And that will mean actually litigating FOIA. There are plenty of people in the ufology community have filed, for example, FOIA requests, been denied, gone through that process, and can't take it from there. They don't have the resources. Disclosure Advocacy Group will begin to handle those cases. We're about 2 weeks away from launch, pending some paperwork. As you know, lawyers like to be pretty perfect on their own internal paperwork, or at least they should be. So it slows things down at times, but we will get there. Disclosure Advocacy Group is going to do that. Certainly, we will represent or at least advise whistleblowers as needed. We'll help to construct legislation. It is a nice synthesis between not only attorneys from different parts of the country, but also different parts of the world. Soon, we're adding new people, and really, it's going to be the practical boots on the ground sort of people who get things done. And I think that's absolutely missing, because without that actual potentiality and reality of bringing filing complaints, filing actions in district courts, I don't think we're going to get anywhere. And so it's not enough to just be a figurehead and say things. You got to actually do it. And I think Disclosure Advocacy Group is that. Now, that said, I'm also working as general chief counsel for UAP Disclosure Fund. And I think the beauty of it is that the UAP Disclosure Fund, the Disclosure Advocacy Group, and other organizations, that we're all going to work together, UAP Caucus, we're all going to collaborate because we're like-minded. We want to come and take the mystery out of this and to begin to actually make common progress on things. But so that's what it's all about. And the people are wonderful lawyers, good people, good ethics. And remember, it's all pro bono. There's not a dollar being made here, fortunately or not. It's not a money thing. It's about, for me personally, it's a matter of civics. We have to have accountability, from our government. And in this case, different parts of the government are certainly letting us down.
Absolutely love that. Yeah, I mean, the legal end of it is absolutely kind of just been just kind of not a black hole, because obviously there are people like Chuck McCullough and others, Mark Zaid, that have been doing really amazing work. But it's really with this just perversion of democracy, with this perversion of justice. It is time to hold these people legally to account. I mean, enough is enough. This is out of hand. So I applaud you guys coming on to do really good work. And I have to say, you'll hear these just absolutely bonkers debunkers. They'll say, we're all grifting and all that kind of stuff. But here you guys are. You're putting your money where your mouth is. You're walking the walk. You are providing legal counsel pro bono for people that really, really need it. And oh man, I can't thank. I know all of us, we can't thank you enough for doing that. So I want to dig into this article, but before we dig into it, I'm just curious from each one of you, what are your initial reactions? Did you see it coming? Was it a surprise? Ivan, we'll start with you.
I'd heard, and first of all, I just want to say, even though I am Lue's attorney, everything that just kudos to Lue for all the sacrifice he's made, for pushing this ball forward, and also Dave Grush. But with respect to Lue, at least, I'm going to say, that anything that I say hereafter is just my personal opinion. It doesn't necessarily represent Lue's opinion. He's a much better voice than me for himself, and he's so he can speak for himself. So I'm just speaking for myself. I'm here. The article is, first of all, and also kudos to Michael Shellenberger. I mean, what terrific journalism.
Absolutely.
Great to have him in this play. He's done it for a while. I hadn't heard from him in a while. I was a little surprised, but here he comes out with something fabulous. Yes, heard there was a new public whistleblower. Don't know his name. If I did, couldn't say it anyway, or her name. But the revelation is fantastic. First, I couldn't help but chuckle a bit because I kept in my mind reading Immaculate Conception. I'm sure many of us have made that mistake. But no, it's fabulous. It shows that the momentum is shifting, and more whistleblowers, potential whistleblowers, are feeling some courage. And I think that's exactly what they need. They need a little more courage. They have resources in for example, Disclosure Advocacy Group and UAP Disclosure Fund. They have legal resources if they wish. We are here. We are ready for them. So, couldn't be happier to see it. Still surprising, like everybody else. I, just read the article today, and I think it's a good step forward. But of course, we need them to come forward and say it not just behind an article, but a very good first step.
Hunt, what are your thoughts? What was your reaction? Did you see this coming? Were you surprised? How do you feel about it?
Well, I mean, yeah, perhaps, seeing it coming in the sense that in the last 7 or 8 years, I think we've seen sort of milestone articles about this topic, get produced that are well sourced. And it seems to me, at least, that incrementally they have gotten a little bit more serious or specific. You go back to 2017 and you come to today and recent articles, involving other whistleblowers as recently as, a year or two ago. So I think my takeaway, despite how boring it may seem, is that it does appear to be an escalation of information on the topic that also demonstrates the ability for that information to be well sourced. That's important because, one of the problems about this topic, particularly from a legal point of view, is the lack of facts to be relied upon. And so, to the extent these articles can inform lawyers or advocacy groups about what to do and where to look, that information is very important, whether it's a Freedom of Information Act request, to a government sub-agency that was until now left alone, and there was simply something there that nobody looked for, or other more direct advocacy efforts. I mean, we rely on this public information to come out so that the folks that want to move the needle can be informed. So I think, yes, I'm encouraged by it. I hope there's more to come, and it was pretty interesting of a read. I read it today and I found it pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I would say with good certainty that there are definitely more things to come. So if the Pentagon, if the CIA think that this is the end of it, they've got another thing coming. They've got a rude wake-up call because more people are going to come forward. They're tired of the lies. They're tired of the obfuscation. They're tired of laws being broken. And quite frankly, I think everyone is tired of and had it to hear with the Pentagon really kind of throwing our men and women who have worn the uniform under the bus, which is what the Pentagon and the CIA has continually done. We've seen it with this topic, and we certainly have seen it with Havana syndrome. It is a feature, not a bug, that the Pentagon and the CIA continue to just bold-faced lie to the American people and into Congress. So, Ivan, I want to get your thoughts on this quote at the very top of the article. Quote, "One of Congress's most important responsibilities is oversight of the executive branch in general and the military and intelligence community in particular. The first article of the United States Constitution specifies this responsibility. This role ensures that powerful governmental entities operate within the bounds of the law, uphold democratic principles, and remain accountable to the American people." Ivan, how important is this to our democracy?
Well, obviously it's fundamental. If the Congress doesn't act because either it doesn't believe it has the right or authority to do so, or simply lacks the curiosity, sometimes, you wonder if it's a combination of both at times. But to be fair to even our people in Congress, it's a public issue. It's a general a low information zone. Now, obviously, the executive not providing the information to Congress that is truthful and accurate, obviously, what is Congress to do? It relies upon, to a large extent, executive agencies to fulfill their function and provide accurate information to Congress so it can make new laws or amend laws or decide not to do anything at all. So the question becomes, why is Congress so, I would say, enfeebled in this? And granted, they've made good strides in the last couple of years. But again, a large part of it is the information that is coming from government agencies themselves. Sean Kirkpatrick, for example, I mean, I'm not going to harp on him too much, but when you send a report to Congress that says there's nothing to see here, you got to think, what staffer is going to say, no, I think there really is something to see here, and what congressperson is going to say, no, I do want to investigate. Granted, there are many who do and who do have a curiosity despite the misleading information that has been provided to them. But, so it's a cultural problem fundamentally. It is, will the executive provide truthful information to Congress? And if not, will Congress do what it needs to do in order to force that to occur? That's really what it comes down to. So it is predominantly cultural. Our Constitution requires, it's like any set of rules. You can, there's rules about crossing the street or driving or whatever. And so in some places, people, follow the law just because it's sort of their default, their culture. Other places they don't. Doesn't mean it's, they have more accidents, but it just is a problem, right? So from my perspective, I think that we have a cultural problem and one that is stemming from the executive misleading Congress and then Congress not recognizing its own power to do something about it.
Yeah, we've said on the show time and time again, Congress, this is you have a constitutional duty of oversight of the executive. And we have continually seen this sort of, the executive continue and try and exert more and more authority and more autonomy. And, that's essentially the road to autocracy, if you think about it. But Congress, at the end of the day, and we know there are a lot of members in Congress, staffers, et cetera, that watch this show. It's up to you guys and girls to do something about this. We can't do that for you. We're giving you the information. These whistleblowers are putting themselves on the line to bring this to their attention. So, They have to step up to the plate. And quite frankly, I think many members of Congress, especially UAP caucus and others, they are well aware now is the time. It's time to put an end to this madness. Now, Hunt, I'd like to get your thoughts on the following paragraph. And again, this is from Shellenberger's article. This responsibility extends to classified programs like Special Access Program, SAPs. By law, the Department of Defense, DoD, must notify the Gang of Eight, the chairpersons and ranking members of the House and Senate Intelligence Committees and the majority and minority leaders of the House and Senate or the relevant congressional committees about their existence. The National Security Act of 1947 requires that covert operations and compartmentalized access programs, which are what the intelligence version of SAPs, by intelligence agencies, including the military intelligence community, be reported to Congress. Specifically, the President must provide a written finding that justifies covert action and submit it to the House and Senate Intelligence Committees. Hunt, why is the Pentagon, in your view, just not complying?
Well, let's put it this way. Imagine for a moment, I don't know this to be true, but imagine for a moment if I said, okay, Congress does that almost all the time. They receive those reports. The Pentagon, the Department of Justice, the corresponding agencies that are subject to essentially that statutory authority that you just showed on the screen, they do that mostly. And they provide reports to Congress, and the Senate Intelligence Committee is briefed on it, and the House Armed Services Committee or House, Intelligence Committee is briefed on it, except for like the one time they don't. Okay. And so, that might be oversimplifying it, but what about the one time they don't do that? Okay. Most of the time, they probably do comply with that statutory provision, right? Because otherwise it'd just be out of control. And Congress, when Congress gets pissed, they withdraw money and they have hearings and nobody likes that. So most of the time, the agencies subject to that statute comply. The problem is, what about like the 1 or 2 times they don't comply with it? There's a lot of problem with that, because now you're asking the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee to say, okay, I'm with you guys 98% of the time, but this 2% of the time that you don't do it is going to piss me off so much that I'm going to upset the whole apple cart of the way I approve your funding and the way we appropriate money to the Defense Department, or at least the intelligence apparatus. And is the Senate, is that member of the Senate Intelligence Committee going to let that 1 or 2 times they know that they got their hands stuck in the cookie jar upset the apple cart? And I know that's oversimplifying it, but that's sort of fundamentally the problem, is that the defense apparatus has become so large that are you really going to monkey with something that, with respect to legislation, gets passed almost unanimously in the middle of December every year for what, 50 years? I mean, it's unprecedented. You're talking about legislation that simply does not get stopped, even during major theaters of war in our current lifetime. So I know that's not a very specific answer to your question. It really just talks about the way the system works. But what it's going to take is some courage. I mean, it's going to take somebody within one of those congressional committees that has developed enough influence and power over the years to say, no, this is it. With respect to this issue, we're not going to dance this dance anymore. You're going to comply. So we could sit here in this call and talk all day about how it does not comply with the statutory provisions. Sadly, there's a lot more to it than that, and the folks that have to do something about it, there's 4 of them, or maybe technically 8 of them, as you mentioned.
Right.
And are they willing to go out on a line, and get the executive branch involved, get the administration involved in doing that? And I think one of the things you're seeing, is that this is an oil tanker to be turned around with very little gas, right? And we're trying to turn the oil tanker around, but we don't really have a lot of fuel to do it, because at the end of the day, the Marco Rubios of the world, and the handful of folks, it's only 8 of them, as you mentioned, their incentive has got to be communicated to them. And so that kind of goes into the cheesy part of public advocacy. Like, people hate, in this topic, when you say, write your congressman, tell your representative. I know they're sick of hearing that. They're sick of hearing that basically for all the issues, right? Because generally the malaise in the United States with respect to the legislative branch is they don't do anything. They never listen to me. They don't want to solve problems. Why am I going to take an hour out of my day and send an email? Unfortunately, that cliche is one of those cliches with truth. There are 3 things that folks in Congress generally care about: fundraising, or the ability to raise funds, the ability to retain their seat, and not pissing off their constituents, probably in that order. And that is the ugly truth of how this is going to break, right? Absent some public event, for example, that moves it.
And Matt,
yeah,
I could add to that.
Please.
And that's why a group like UAP Disclosure Fund, because what Hunt is referring to, by the public advocacy, contact your representative, send them a tweet, send them a letter, make a call. When you look at, I'm here at the Association of Corporate Counsel conference in Nashville, and some of the attendees, for example, represent, organizations, let's say, of forest product, manufacturers, paper manufacturers, or they have these associations. So people will come and they'll be the, general counsel for an association of manufacturers. And that's to some extent what we're missing. While it's great to also have individuals make those communications to your individual congressman, please do that, congressperson, please do that. But having organizations gather together and unify is critical to the lobbying effort. And that's what UAPDF, for example, as an organization, has a unique role to play, in my opinion, which is facilitating the organization and the funding of other UAP pro-disclosure organizations so that collectively we can form a coherent lobbying group. It is not to have, I like the idea of having 1,000 voices, 1,000, lighters in the air, and that's great. But what we actually need to do is take advantage of the existing organizations within ufology, in my opinion, and gather them together under an umbrella. I hope UAPDF can serve in part in that role. We will see. But to help organize things so that we can make a concerted and united effort. Ufology is quite fractured internally. There's a lot of, personality issues, other issues. But if we unify around a common front, we can become the lobbying group to sufficiently persuade, influence, whatever you want to call it, the congressional representatives so that they take notice of this issue. Without it, it will, my fear is that you can get the next whistleblower and the next whistleblower, and I think the next one's going to have to, bring a UFO behind them on a cart. We need to have that organizational unity to facilitate the lobbying that essentially will persuade more members, the more recalcitrant or uninformed or whatever you want to call it, members of Congress, to take this issue seriously and do their duties, because otherwise, it's a sad state of affairs for civics.
Yeah, absolutely. This whole thing, this kind of Twitter drama that I think some people on I keep calling it Twitter X, as far as the Lue Elizondo folks and then the Jay Stratton folks, people need to stop with that. Lue and Jay have done really great things for this country. They've done really great things to move this ball forward. This kind of internal bickering, it doesn't do this topic, this movement, any good. People need to put on their big boy, big girl pants and let's move on and let's do the work. Now I want to continue. Go ahead. You were about to say something.
I certainly wouldn't want to represent Lue's voice here, but Lue, as everybody has ever seen, if you've ever watched him, he's an incredibly positive person. He has good things to say about people. He does not talk badly about people. He is a positive human being. And I think he wants that unity, amongst all his peers as well as others. He wants to see cooperation, community, and a positive movement. So at least, my personal experience with Lue is he is that type of person. I think that's represented quite well on anything he's ever been on. I've not heard him say a negative word. He is just not that person. He follows, I think, that principle. If you don't have anything good to say, don't say it. And so he's a very positive person, and I think he's a force for unification, and he brings a good reputation to the regular public.
Yeah, I totally agree with him. Folks, you're hearing this from Lue Elizondo's public attorney. I can tell you, in my experience, my extended conversations with Lue, I have never once heard him say a bad thing about Stratton or really anyone for that matter. He is a big believer of, we all are better as a team, not being fractured. So people that are out there on UFO Twitter, stirring all of this drama for clicks and whatnot, Guy, you're hurting it. You're hurting the effort. It's absolutely not worth it. It's
right. And even for things like, for getting the personal dramas, even for pieces of legislation, people have the right to have different opinions about UAP Disclosure Act or whatever, whatever the, eminent domain, everything attracts its critics. One person has its reasons and the other, different set, but gathering together and trying to really, not let the perfect be the enemy of the good, bridging relationships and moving together. And again, that's why I think UAP Disclosure Fund, through its efforts, will eventually hopefully serve as a central point for creating that lobbying force, which is, I think, sort of the accountability piece. And, just one last thing to say is to your credit and credit like many other, to Michael Shellenberger and Eric von Rennenkamp and Ross Coulthart and Leslie Kean and, George Knapp and all the others, they're doing a tremendous job of trying through the press to hold, not necessarily the mainstream press, but to hold, our legislators accountable because, the bureaucracy in the executive is anonymous. Most of us don't know who they are, but you only have your legislator. And if that person isn't interested in this topic, obviously we fall prey to those within the executive who, in its Rube Goldberg-esque bureaucracy, find ways of doing what they want despite, what they should be doing, which is informing Congress and letting Congress make the decision on our behalf as the citizens. That's the way it works in a constitutional democracy, in a republic. So that's what needs to happen.
Yeah, agreed. I want to move on to some further point in the or further a section in in Shellenberger's article that touches on the Pentagon's all domain anomaly resolution office, and really this is about the former director, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, who I think everyone would agree was just an abject failure. The guy can't even write a freaking his historical report past the level of a fifth grader. It's absolutely embarrassing. And quite frankly, I have no idea how Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick has a job in the Department of Energy, probably holding a Q clearance, guarding our nation's nuclear secrets, and we've got that clown in there. Anyway, so Ivan, so the article points out that, quote, there is no evidence that any non-human or extraterrestrial intelligence has visited Earth, according to a May 2024 report by the office the Pentagon created in 2022 to study unidentified anomalous phenomenon, UAP, formerly called UFOs, as Shellenberger notes. The Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO, quote, in their report, they said, quote, they assesses that the inaccurate claim that the U.S. government is reverse engineering extraterrestrial technology and is hiding it from Congress is, in large part, the report concluded, the result of circular reporting from a group of individuals who believe this to be the case, despite the lack of any evidence. Shellenberger states, it goes on to note that the report was riddled with factual errors and poor referencing, including Wikipedia, which we know Wikipedia is just one giant propaganda machine, thanks to Susan Gerbic, Mick West, and the Guerrilla Skeptics. So, Ivan, do you think Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick was lying to Congress about what he knew?
I would have to imagine so. I would have to say that I think he's misrepresenting, at the very least, what he knows. And if he knows so little, then that's, another point of contention. I think without going further into Dr. Kirkpatrick personally, I think Merrick von Rennenkamp did a pretty nice job of, contesting him in another instance. And the report itself was, lackluster, to put it best. And at some point there's two things I would say. Is first of all is, I hope I don't forget the second one, but he's essentially impugning the motivations of those like Lue Elizondo, like Dave Grush, like other whistleblowers who have purportedly come before Congress.
Chris Mellon,
right? He's essentially saying that their credibility is in doubt. Now, obviously, anybody can say this, but if you imagine that these very trusted governmental officials who have held very senior office, tremendous responsibility, lifelong career servants, or came into service of the government, and when they have many other opportunities, to think that these people are the ones who are lying and should not be trusted, or simply, silly enough to imagine, not to properly investigate and fulfill the duties of their jobs. But on the other hand, the person we should trust is him. That's a jury's not going to buy that. I'm sorry. He's not. Nobody's going to believe him. And the strange thing about Dr. Kirkpatrick, going back to motive, is I've never seen somebody who's left the job still show up as often, to pour himself a cup of coffee. He's like,
yeah, really.
What's this guy doing? I just don't understand it. So you wonder about his motives. Some of his connections to some of the Wikipedia stuff are curious. I really think it's time that we pay less attention to him. But unfortunately, he thrives. He's like an energy vampire. He thrives on negative energy. So, but he has to be addressed. When he makes a serious and substantive allegation, it should be should be countered in the same way. Unfortunately, it's very hard to take him seriously. And the Arrow report was not very serious at all. I think we need we do have new leadership in Arrow. Hopefully, it is to the good. There's always hope for that, and I hope so. So that's my perspective. Is the Arrow report was a misrepresentation of the reality of things. It was done intentionally. There's no other way to. I can't see any other inference. I think Dr. Kirkpatrick himself, his motivations are very curious, and I think that his impeachment of the truth telling and the desire to say that that people like Lue and Chris and others and Dave are simply silly enough to have gone into circular reasoning. I mean, prove it. Give us more. But he doesn't. He won't. So it's just nonsense. We need to move past. Hopefully Arrow regains a better role. We'll see. But Kirkpatrick, nothing kind to say. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I'll give you a bit of news. So Sean Kirkpatrick, and I'm blanking on the guy's name, but he was a guy that headed up NASA's UAP investigation where they had that big panel. Sean Kirkpatrick and this guy are appearing on a national television show to debunk UFOs. It's going to happen right around January. So, because a lot of people will say to me, Matt, why do you keep calling out Mick West? I mean, everyone knows Mick West is a fraud, nothing short of that. Everyone knows Sean Kirkpatrick is a fraud. And everyone's like, well, if you quit talking about them, they're going to go away. But the fact of the matter is that they're not. So here we have Sean Kirkpatrick with one of the head scientists in NASA is going to go on a national television show to debunk UFOs. In particular, they're going to go and they're going to debunk the Aquadia case. So, these disinformation agents, these paid disinformation agents are just continuing to shovel out this propaganda on behalf of the Pentagon, the CIA, and the DOE. I mean, it's got to stop.
It's strange. You should take his, why doesn't he, Dr. Kirkpatrick would be better off, joining Consumer Reports to, dispute various claims of accuracy. I hope somebody produces a meme of Kirkpatrick with the Consumer Report magazine. But anyway, look, the bottom line is, he's, his intentions are the ones that are questionable.
Yeah.
Who spends their time disproving things? Let the science work itself out. Let the process work itself out. Why not allow further discovery? Why not hear more potential whistleblowers? Why not accredit some truth to this? It's very strange.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so Hunt, the article noted that former President Donald Trump vouched for the credibility of UAP witnesses and whistleblowers, noting, quote, "I've interviewed solid people," said Trump in September. It says again, Shellenberger talking here. Great pilots for the U.S. Air Force, etc. They've seen things they cannot explain. Trump continued, "I have access and I speak to people about it. I've actually had meetings on it and they will tell you there's something going on." Hunt, tell us about the bona fides of these various whistleblowers. David Grush, pilots. You'll hear people like Kirkpatrick and professional debunkers like Mick West and whatnot say that they don't know what they're seeing. They're seeing balloons. As an attorney, if these whistleblowers came in and testified to what they saw, these expert witnesses, would that hold up? Maybe not, it's a bit of a loose analogy, but would that hold up in a court of law, what these folks are saying?
Yeah. Well, what's ironic about that is, if I were to be involved in, let's say, a trial, like in my practice, and let's say it was a building collapse, and part of the case was showing the jury what engineering mechanisms happened when the building collapsed, and I had to provide witnesses that said, the wall started cracking along this line, and then this pylon went out, and then all hell broke loose, and that was the story that I had to tell the jury about what happened in this case. And I said, now here comes a witness, and here's Captain Smith. And just so you know, Captain Smith, did 6 tours in Iraq as an F-22 pilot, for 20 years. He retired honor. What do you think the jury's credibility assessment of that witness is right before they say anything? He's up there, he's clean cut, he's got a 22-year career serving his country, and I'm about to have him, just say some stuff, some facts to the jury, and it's really important that they believe what he saw, right? Because that's the whole point of the case. And what do you think the jury's going to think about that type of witness? I mean, what would you think about that type of? I mean, wouldn't you immediately be impressed with that and find that to be somebody credible? And what I'm trying to demonstrate is it really is shocking to me that some of the folks that we consider in our daily lives perhaps the most credible and reliable are all of a sudden morons. And not just morons in a layperson's term, moron in the professional setting by which they are asked to take upon great responsibility, like use sophisticated equipment on a $60 million air platform. It's mind-boggling to me that all of a sudden that person saw something that they didn't see and is inherently unreliable as to this particular topic, but all other conceivable topics that they may provide testimony on, they're one of the most reliable folks we would love to hear from. Isn't that odd to you?
Yeah.
So to answer your question, I try cases to juries, right? That's essentially what I do. It's mind-boggling to me to see some folks that I would think are star witnesses when presenting facts to be so offhandedly dismissed, particularly by people who weren't there and don't know anything about it. And the ordinary institutions that we all rely on to get us through the day don't work like that.
Right.
So my question is, why does it work like that for this topic? Why do we suspend the mechanisms of testimony and eyewitness testimony in particular on this topic, and yet as to all other things that we do in life, it seems to be the way that we get to results that we need, whether it's in a courtroom, which is our expertise, but a political campaign or whenever the public receives information. People make credibility judgments about people all the time. It does give you pause to think that all of a sudden that's turned upside down just because we're talking about stuff that's unexplainable. And so why is that? Well, I mean, I think lawyers who have long legal cases where we dig through thousands of documents and we look really at what's going on, and that's very boring. It's not exciting, but when you look at that full picture, generally you see that something else is going on. Okay, there's either some kind of obscurity, there's some kind of truth to be hidden, there's some kind of policy that's not being followed, right? There's a breakdown of the safety system that normally exists that we're all used to somewhere, and somebody's trying to prevent the public from knowing about it. Yeah. And it happens with big corporations, and it happens with the government. And it doesn't matter that it's this kind of spooky topic, guys. This is something, and this is why the lawyers that perhaps may hear this could be motivated a little bit. This is what you two were talking about. I think I made this example, earlier. It's like Congress gives money to the NTSB so that the NTSB can give its safety information so that it can pass laws keeping people safe on the interstate, right? And so imagine if the NTSB were in bed with, tire manufacturers, and they didn't want to tell Congress that there's this process of retreading tires that saves them $10 million a year collectively, and they could technically get by inspection. And by getting by inspection, they save a lot of money. And so the NTSB isn't going to report the statistics of death and serious injury involving retread tires. I mean, this is the same kind of thing, right? It's just a different topic. If this agency that we've been talking about is not providing accurate information to Congress, that's nothing new. They know how to deal with that. That they're empowered to deal with that, and they should. Unfortunately, as to your question about whistleblowers, it takes somebody seeing that nonsense. It takes somebody seeing that misinformation being provided to Congress to have the courage to go say something about it. And you mentioned two individuals who not only did so, but they did so under the consequence, of prosecution if they were lying to Congress under oath, which is not a small thing. And in my professional career, the consequences of that are not something people take lightly. So yes, it's very concerning that the individuals who provide testimony, especially when it's under oath to a congressional committee, are hand-waved and dismissed because they do so with respect to great consequence to themselves, which I don't think is talked about enough. I mean, we are prosecuting folks right now. The Department of Justice is prosecuting folks for defying subpoenas to Congress, for lying to Congress. I mean, that you see that on the nightly news right now. I mean, these are crimes. And so I guess either these folks are either all committing crimes or they're telling the truth.
Yeah.
I would just add to that, Matt, look back. I mean, just to give you an example of two witnesses I always found very, very interesting. Look at Commander Fravor and Alex Dietrich. Commander Fravor, has maintained the same story. It's been, I think, over a decade at least, and I mean, there's not that many, as I understand it, commanders of air wings on carrier battle groups. Alex Dietrich, she was she's a woman and a fighter pilot off of a carrier. I mean, that's a remarkable, she's a remarkable person. And for her, they're just almost unimpeachable witnesses. Now, could they be wrong? Sure. But to impeach their motivations in service to this country is insane. And the one thing from a legal point that I would just add to what Hunt said is one of the problems is that we don't have the substantive underlying evidence, right, in terms of it hasn't been provided of the radar, all the stuff that would give substance to it, right? The radar tracks, what's being seen by satellites, the documentary evidence has been hidden. And in law, that's called spoliation. So even if you have a perfect witness, you want the backup for it, but it's been retained, it's been kept hidden, discarded, secreted away, whatever you want to call it. So even when you get great witnesses like the ones we've just mentioned or others, people want to see, well, what else do you have for me? And that has not been provided. So we're in a combination of discrediting the witness and hiding the substantive evidence that would allow us to make a different conclusion. And that's simply a wrong.
Well, and speaking of witnesses, expert witnesses. So Shellenberger noted he had these quotes from CIA Director John Brennan, where John Brennan said, former CIA Director John Brennan, he said, quote, "I think some of the phenomena we may be seeing continue to be unexplained and might be some type of phenomenon that results from something that we don't yet understand and could involve some type of activity that might, say, constitutes a different form of life." And then Shellenberger notes in that exact same year, the Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines, said UAPs could constitute non-human intelligence. So, Ivan, it seems like the amount of officials coming forward is pretty profound. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's more officials are coming out, more people are making these statements, and I think we're always looking for the next one to come through with something, like I said, dragging a UFO behind on a little, red trailer or something. I think we need to understand that the testimony and what we've already been provided with, is certainly, I think satisfies at least a preponderance of the evidence standard. We need more of the underlying evidence to get out before we can go to beyond a reasonable doubt, right? So we're at more than 51%. Maybe we aren't satisfying the 95%, 98% standard yet, but it's because evidence has been hidden, and we're having high-level people, people of wonderful careers, people, just as Hunt said, who in every other aspect of their career in life are considered upstanding, incredible people, and people you would take seriously, and people who've really sacrificed. And I point at Lue as one of them, and so Dave Grush as well. These are good people. They're not the grifters. They're not rich. They are suffering. And why would they do this? And to subject themselves to many, many years of ridicule, decades of ridicule, craziness. They don't do this out of some motivation to create a fictional story or what. They're here out of their goodwill. We should accept that and take it all very seriously and demand the truth. Just like Lue says, America can handle the truth, but it's up to us to demand that our legislators, that are the staff in Congress, the staffers, work at this, convince your legislators to take this seriously, so we can start getting to the bottom of this incredible mystery.
Absolutely. Now, Hunt, in 2023, whistleblower David Grush came forward and testified under oath. For viewers that are maybe new to the show, tell us kind of in a nutshell what David Grush said. And I would also point out, I think one of you guys pointed this out earlier, that David Grush testified under oath, under the threat of perjury, if he lied in front of Congress. So give us a bit of background about what David Grush had to say.
Yeah, well, to your point, I don't think that is stressed enough. So, for example, lawyers follow very closely congressional hearings. Unfortunately, the reality is, when the average member of the public hears about congressional hearings, it does not bring with it the same kind of constitutional necessity that some of us in the legal community consider about it. And the reason is because, sadly, a lot of congressional hearings that the public hears about are generally partisan political matters. Like, they hear congressional hearing and they think about Benghazi, or they hear congressional hearing and think about Hunter Biden's laptop, or whatever the political flavor of the day is, depending on your side. And the sad part about that is congressional hearings are a fundamental part of the way our, federalist constitutional democracy works, because it's the fact-finding ability of the legislative branch, right? That's extraordinarily important because it's what informs the legislative branch. So, for example, if you follow this topic, 2 years ago, I believe, Mr. Bray testified with another armed services member to Congress, and they were not under oath. And they were asked to essentially give a PowerPoint presentation on UAP. Now, if you're following congressional hearings, that's significant, because there is no consequence for that testimony. There's, here's some information, and this is being publicly shown and aired on television, and maybe we'll have a cool picture, but other than that, we don't know anything. And so, to answer your question, I think the lawyers that have been following this topic particularly keyed in on the fact that Mr. Grush, when he gave his testimony, was placed under oath. Now, that was different than the other two witnesses, because the other two witnesses were essentially witnesses. They were placed under oath and they talked about something they had seen. Mr. Grush's testimony was not that. Mr. Grush's testimony, which is a matter of public record, consisted of a very concerning, high-level effort to conceal fundamental information about the world from the public. Okay? Now, forget the reverse engineering and all the stuff that goes along with that topic and all the science and the exploitation. What I think, from a legal perspective, was so incredibly important about that testimony was, if true, that a handful of unelected bureaucrats have decided on their own that you, are either too stupid or too scared to be told about a fundamental concept of the planet. Now that, hopefully for some of the lawyers listening, that will piss you off. Okay? Because that's frankly what we're talking about here. And so Mr. Grush, to great consequence to himself, provided testimony about those programs and that they were being kept from the appropriate congressional committees, which is required by law, as we've said many times tonight. And so that, that's those types of hearings don't happen in Congress. I mean, they just don't happen, right? If you follow Congress and you watch C-SPAN and you look at transportation committee hearings and it's a bunch of statistics by somebody in an agency and this is what you should do and this is where your money should go, it's not like this. So it was extraordinarily unprecedented from scope and consequence. Unfortunately, I blame, again, sort of the oversaturation of the partisan politics that comes with congressional hearings for some of the explanation why it may have not caught on enough to the public, and particularly to the First Amendment media publications that we had hoped would perform their constitutional duty to report on it. Unfortunately, it not caught on as we would have liked. Although I do think it made probably, at least from my perspective, more news than any other similarly situated hearing or public statement on this topic. So yes, I think from a legal perspective, it was extraordinary. What he said was extraordinary and a matter of public record. And to my knowledge, Mr. Grush has, at least I have not seen in the media, that he's suffered any consequence for saying anything untruthful to Congress. And as, again, we know, the Department of Justice will take that seriously. There is a legal mechanism where Congress refers untruthful testimony and perjury to the Department of Justice for prosecution. That certainly has not happened in his case, and it would have by now if it were. So that is compelling.
I would just add to that. It's what Hunt said is right. Absolutely. Testifying under oath. Obviously, there's an implicit threat of prosecution if you lie. But I would just take it even simpler. Dave Grush. What about him suggests that he's lying about anything? Under oath, not under oath. I mean, I'm glad it was under oath and before Congress. But he's an American hero. I don't think he's misrepresenting. I don't think he knows probably how to tell a lie. I think that's the type of person. That's what I get from when I've heard him. I've not met him, but I think he's telling the truth. And under oath gave him the opportunity, sort of the opportunity to tell his truth. So yes, very important. But look beyond just considering the administration of the oath. Is look at the person. Some people do lie under oath. It's true. Some suffer consequences. But look at the motivation. How has he benefited from his testimony? I see nothing but a person who has endured a lot of issues, and so I think you look at that too.
Well, and in the Shellenberger article, Shellenberger notes what Senator Marco Rubio stated. And Rubio stated, quote, most of the UAP whistleblowers have held very high clearances and high positions within our government. So you do have to ask yourself, what incentive would so many people with that kind of qualification, these are serious people, Rubio notes, have to come forward and make something up? Why would any whistleblower make this stuff up? The fact is that they would not.
Yeah, motive is always a key part. You go to the motive of everything. When people breach a contract, there's got to be a motive, unless they're a chaotic madman, and that's not how these people have lived their lives. So go back to motive. Look, what is the motive here? Dave Grush has told the truth. Lue Elizondo has told the truth. Others are trying to tell their truth. We need to get them before Congress. Congress has to do its job.
Yeah, agreed. Now, Hunt, the evidence seems to indicate that the Pentagon and the CIA have been lying to the public and Congress about UAPs. Shellenberger notes that there is a long history of the U.S. Air Force blatantly lying in the past to the public. Is there any reason, in your view, that they are being truthful, that they really, that there's nothing to this? Or does this pass the smell test that they're being truthful, do you think?
Well, I mean, it certainly doesn't pass the smell test because the smell would have wafted off, decades ago. I mean, it's 2024, and here we are talking about this. We have to talk about some kind of obfuscation effort, by the Department of the Air Force, in whatever year that initial report concerning the Blue Book files came out, which was what, the 50s, the 60s. I don't know. I know it's been a long time, and it certainly didn't put the matter to rest. But I do want to stress, though, the one of the things that some of the lawyers that discuss this topic, in a collegiate way, and try and really drill down on what are we doing here, like what is going on, okay, right? What legal mechanisms can we use to really understand what's going on? And one of the revelations is that this topic actually fits very nicely, and I know this might not be a popular take necessarily, but bear with me. This topic actually fits very nicely with a lot of precedent on other non-spooky topics. I mean, the government has done horrible things and lied about it and got caught about it. And it's not really fair to say the government. That's not fair. I mean, it's really just some element within the auspices of the official government that we're talking about. It's really silly to say the government, and forgive me for that overgeneralization. But the Navy poisoned thousands of Marines at Camp Lejeune for years and swept it under the rug. I mean, there are graveyards at that military facility for unborn fetuses because of the petroleum and groundwater that leaked into that military facility. I know because I'm litigating with the Department of Justice right now, pursuant to a big law that Congress finally passed, 70 years later, to give those victims some justice. I mean, that happened. That's not nonsense. This was during, the Vietnam era, when people were going and fighting and dying while, like, their family was back home drinking poisoned water. I mean, that happened. And so what I mean to say is this stuff, this crazy stuff is not as crazy as it sounds with respect to precedent. There are examples of the government doing something extraordinary that doesn't pass the smell, like, this can't possibly be true. Then you find out it is. And then there's all this reconciliatory legislation that gets passed after the fact. But people were pounding the table while it was happening, right? Yeah. They were pounding the table. They were saying, look, this happened. And it just gets lost. And then all of a sudden, one day you wake up and it's like, wait a second. Holy moly, this was happening. These people were right. Congress is finally getting their act together. The question is that moment now, right? Is that moment now on this topic? I think hopefully it is, but I think you said earlier, one of these days it's gonna come out.
It is.
It can't be held forever.
Yeah.
And the folks within government that have the ability to do it responsibly really need to think about doing that, because this controversy is no different than the multitude of controversies before that, because ultimately the lesson is someone's going to get an education, folks, and when that happens, where do you want to be sitting? Were you pounding the table, or, are you going to your deposition?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Well, also as well, Rubio, I was talking about Senator Marco Rubio earlier, and this kind of goes back, Hunt, to whistleblowers. Rubio noted that, quote, high clearances and high positions within our government with firsthand knowledge of UAPs, people with firsthand clearances like David Grush and others, were fearful of harm coming to them through retaliation. Hunt, what kind of retaliation are you hearing about?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, this is really a sensitive topic. I mean, unfortunately, to answer your question directly, what we hear about is a full kaleidoscope of things. There's the type of retaliation that lawyers are used to seeing, which is administrative, come for your job, come for the credentials that will employ you in the future. If we take those out from underneath you, that's serious retaliation. That's your livelihood. You have a family, you're on a fixed government salary, that carries with it serious consequences. Lawyers are kind of used to dealing with that, and that's some of the retaliation that we've heard about. Unfortunately, this topic also brings with it an element of retaliation that goes significantly beyond that, which includes the threat of bodily harm and the intimidation, the physical intimidation of individuals, and or even potentially the committing acts that would certainly be almost what I can only describe as cartel-like with respect to intimidation that I don't think most lawyers are used to seeing, frankly. That's just not, because there's not really a legal remedy for that. And unfortunately, and I don't know this, but unfortunately, one of the motivations to employ a physical retaliation, type of method would be because there's not much legally you can do about it. I mean, we have employment laws and yes, some whistleblower protection methods that allow that person to demonstrate that they were retaliated against in the employment sense. We can present evidence of that and we can adjudicate that. But this other category of retaliation is very troubling to me because I will tell you, I don't know if there's anybody with a law license in this country that can give you a really good answer about what to do about that legally. Because yes, we can sit here and talk until we're blue in the face about how it's illegal and terrible. But if you asked me what I would do as somebody's lawyer to stop it, or to go after it, even from a legal sense, I'm not sure I could tell you the answer. That's one of the academic questions that I think we're really struggling with, but also it dovetails into one of the needs that Congress has to take up with respect to new legislation that protects whistleblowers, particularly in this space when it comes to that sort of behavior. Because if you empower me as a lawyer to go in a civil sense after the individuals who perpetuated that physical retaliation and intimidation, that's a big gift to these whistleblowers. They would have, a hammer to swing, but they really don't have a hammer to swing right now. Or if they do, they're too concerned to swing it. So they need some additional protections. And I think that's, kind of part of what our group is talking about with some of the congressional committees, that there's got to be additional protections before somebody puts their ass on the line.
Ivan, your thoughts?
Well, it's a complicated issue. I do think whistleblowers, in terms of the illegal kinetic threats made to some people, first of all, I think, at least for some of them, I hope that they've achieved a degree of respect and reputation that they would be, that would be unlikely. I hope. There's no guarantees. But in terms of some of the other more subtle effects, taking away security, putting security clearances under review, those are difficult to engage. When somebody has departed government service, their security clearance is now under review. They can't find themselves with a new job, and it's curious about why that is. But needless to say, there will be a recourse. First, if you're doing, for the people who contemplated doing things that would provide, cause physical harm, they made a big mistake. And for those who are affecting negatively, by hurting the post-career possibilities of whistleblowers, you've also made a terrible mistake. And we will get to the bottom of it. It will take time. but the whistleblowers also have to have more, courage. And when I say that they have a resource through Disclosure Advocacy Group and through UAPDF, I know that Hunt is an amazing trial attorney. I'm okay, but we will go with our clients to wherever it leads. And I welcome that fight. I want that fight.
Now, I understand that the Pentagon is in violation of 10 USC Section 119 and NDAA era reporting requirements. What exactly is that? What are they in violation of with kind of where things are at? Either one of you.
Yeah, I mean, with respect to Matt, I think your question is talking about with respect to the fundamental requirement that some of these programs be briefed to Congress, right? And so when we say, the violation of that, we're talking about they're not being briefed, right? I will tell you that this is another topic that we, from a legal standpoint, have spent a lot of breath on. Because the answer is probably not very sexy to your audience, but probably deals with what lawyers would call like a constitutional crisis, okay? And maybe even more specifically, a constitutional showdown, because the Congress can pass a law generally about whatever it wants. It can be challenged in the courts, and if the courts don't strike it down, it is the law. Okay? What's the next check on the legitimacy of that law? The next check on the legitimacy of that law is the persons or class of persons that that law applies to, or perhaps the government agency that that law applies to. Okay? And so, assuming that the courts will not get involved to resolve that dispute, from a constitutional standpoint, meaning, my rights are violated, this law discriminates against me. Assuming that issue is not the case, then the constitutional crisis is to what extent the legislative branch can compel the executive branch to do something. Okay, now that's a fight that a lot of Supreme Court ink has been spilled on in various degrees, right? But the problem with the question practically is, how will we resolve that dispute? Who will move to resolve that dispute, Matt? Right? If Congress says, you better tell me all the secret shit that you're doing or you don't get any money, and the executive branch says, well, okay, sure. Yes, I'll do that. But then they actually don't do that. Who do you go to say, sir, they didn't follow the law? Because again, we can talk about how it's illegal all we want, but how are you going to resolve that dispute? And so one of the problems that we know is an individual won't have legal standing to resolve that dispute. So whistleblower A can't go to court and say, Article 3 judge, Your Honor, they're not following the law. Let me tell you how I know about it. Okay, they don't have standing to do that. Okay, well, who might have? Well, the Senate Intelligence Committee might have standing to go to that court and say they're not following the law, right? And so that's never happened before. Do you see how? So that's not happened before,
right?
And so what the question is how this constitutional showdown gets resolved if everybody wants to put gloves on and go fight about it. Okay, but one of the legal issues is, how do we start the fight? because if we don't start the fight, the legal showdown, it doesn't matter what the answer to this question is, because it won't be resolved. And I know that's not a sexy kind of UFO thing, because the fundamentals are a constitutional showdown here. And one of the reasons that the concept of disclosure matters is because of the avenue of disclosure to Congress, which I suggest you separate from the avenue of disclosure to the public. Because, again, what the public can do with that information is different than what Congress constitutionally is powered to do. But so far, what we've seen is draft legislation to kind of reinforce the concept of your question. We told you to do this. We don't think you're doing it. Now we're going to specifically say, for example, in the most recent Defense Authorization Act, you may not fund the following types of programs. And then you've probably covered it on your show. There's legislation that says UAP specific programs, special access, doesn't matter what super duper word you use. They may not be funded without disclosure to Congress, right? So now they're like, okay, let's zero in on what we think is wrong and let's pass a law. And probably what will happen is let's see if that's complied with, right? And so I don't think, frankly, the constitutional showdown that I'm describing is going to happen until the major branches of and by branches I mean the committees, the major committees in Congress muster enough evidence and courage to see that something so fundamental is not being complied with that it's time to kick the tires. I mean, I hate to sound so cliche, but my hunch is that's what it will require.
Got it. Okay, let's dig more into the article, in particular this unacknowledged special access program. So in this entire article, the big bombshell of this is this name that got leaked. And he says in there, quote, one of these individuals is a current or former U.S. government official acting as a UAP whistleblower. The person has written a report that says, quote, the executive branch, speaking of executive branch, has been managing UAP, NHI, non-human intelligence issues without congressional knowledge, without oversight or authorization for some time, quite possibly decades. Quote, furthermore, these individuals have revealed the name of an active and highly secretive Department of Defense Unacknowledged Special Access Program, or USAP. The source of the document told Shellenberger's publication Public that the USAP is a, quote, strategic intelligence program that is part of the U.S. military's family long-standing, highly sensitive programs dealing with various aspects of the UAP problem. Very highly sensitive programs, plural, dealing with various aspects of the UAP program. Shellenberg's publication Public is revealing its name here for the very first time, Immaculate Constellation. Did any of this surprise you, Ivan?
I mean, well, I mean, I'd like to know more about this whistleblower, but no, substantively, I mean, this is in accord with, the historical information that we have, that the U.S. government has been, for a long period of time, investigating, researching, engineering, objects of unknown origin, let's say. So I think that this, it's phenomenal testimony, obviously, or the statement, I guess, is both prosaic in the sense that it tells us what we already assume, but also still shocking to hear that that a very high level whistleblower is confirming what we have all suspected. So just my gut reaction is both happiness to see somebody willing to speak to Mr. Shellenberger and provide that information, curiosity about who the person is, concern for that person so that they realize that if they need legal help or representation, I absolutely can assure you we're there for them, for that person, and others. And just in the hope that whether it's through your audience, Matt, or through others, that this story, that this impacts, the right ears. Just as Hunt was saying, it's up to Congress to decide what it wants to do about all of this, and it needs that it needs to start moving. We need to get to the hearings. We need to take this more seriously. But I will remind you of one last thing, though, that, it's hard. This is hard for the whistleblowers. It's hard for everybody. I try within my domain of lawyers, people I know within institutions to get them interested in this topic. And it's almost like Men in Black with the little device. I don't even have to have one. They do it to themselves. You tell them, the Senate passed the UAP Disclosure Act. Now, just briefly, I understand some people don't love all of it. Some people want more into it, whatever they want. But if it were to pass, imagine what you could say to a group like the American Medical Association or, the Association of Corporate Counsel or the State Bar Association. It's like, no, this is real, right? This is something that the Congress, not just the Senate, and have to have a caveat for the House, is taking seriously. So, getting back to it all, phenomenal reporting, great curiosity about it. It comes down to Congress doing its job, as you'd call it. It means that we, as the people, have to organize to influence the Congress so that they take it seriously. But we also have to, within our own individual domains, not everybody's a lawyer, not everybody has the time to devote to it. I get it. But within your own domains, to have the courage to speak up. And that's why I think back to people like Lue and Dave Grush and Commander Favor and all the historical figures, having the courage, really, the courage to, foolhardy courage to come out and say that, I believe in these things and that these are real programs. And here's some of the names of this Immaculate Constellation, which is a great name, I guess, maybe. Or Starstruck would be another name, let's say. So I'm starstruck. If I had to rename it, I would call it Starstruck. But, I'm pretty starstruck by all of this. And, it's remarkable.
I'm going to give you a little breadcrumb. Search for more things, FOIA things that have the word immaculate in there.
We will. And I know that right as we're speaking now, on the Twitterverse or Xverse or whatever they're calling it now, I can see people just typing away at their next FOIA request. And we'll be there to litigate the ones that really are worth pursuing. Do
you remember that game show Password?
Sure.
The password is immaculate.
Immaculate. Well, it's funny because there's a guy he's an attorney, but it's on Twitter, Curious Explorer, and he suggested that the phrase "Immaculate Constellation" was actually there was quite a spike back in June of 2023. I haven't verified all of this, but I suspect he knows what he's talking about. So it's very curious that this phrasing reached a crescendo in June of 2023. And then settled into nothing, and now, of course, is popping back up. Curious stuff. I wonder why that is.
Well, he knows what he's talking about. Immaculate is the password, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so I want to kind of dig in length and do kind of talk a little bit more, quote out of this article in particular, because there is a lot of detail in here. So again, this is just reading straight out of Shellenberger's article, which goes on to state, quote, the whistleblower alleges that the Department of Defense created the USAP called Immaculate Constellation in 2017 after the New York Times published an article describing an informal Pentagon UAP program called ATIP, or Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. The report shared with Congress says Immaculate Constellation serves as a central or parent USAP that consolidates observations of UAPs and by both tasked and untasked collection platforms. So we've got this aspect of it. And the article goes on to say that the whistleblowers' reports include 7 categories of evidence. It describes in detail various UAP sightings collected by technical assets and U.S. military personnel. Quote, the multitude of wavelengths collected by these sensors, the report says, have captured UAP characteristics that are difficult or impossible to observe with the human eye alone. Subtle atmospheric effects associated with UAPs are also visible through the sensors employed by the U.S. military and intelligence agencies. Quote, the verifiable chain of custody for UAP imminent quality imagery intelligence collected by U.S. military assets, the person wrote, quote, ensures a high level of confidence in the accuracy and integrity of the data gathered. The report concludes the existence of Immaculate Constellation demonstrates the capability to detect, quarantine, and transfer UAP and ARV, or alien reproduction vehicle, collection incidents before they are observed and circulated within the military intelligence enterprise, thus serving as a means of enforcing internal information security. A former IC official confirmed to public the existence of Immaculate Constellation. Not conception. Quote, the program is run out of the Secretary of Defense. Lloyd Austin would be the person. They don't want to acknowledge it's real, was a quote. The same person warned that simply printing the name Immaculate Constellation could trigger government surveillance under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act of whoever publishes it. They won't comment on it, but talking about it will put you in the danger zone. They will enforce the secrecy with a lot of vigor. I can tell you firsthand that a FISA exemption exists where they can surveil American citizens without a FISA warrant if it is part of protecting the legacy program. I can tell you that as an absolute fact, which just absolutely flies in the face of just really anything in terms of the justice system. So if they view, little birdie told me that the NSA watches this show and that they are noting who comments on it. If they view my show as a danger to the legacy program, they do not need a FISA warrant to surveil me. Period. The end. And this is a secret exemption that you guys, I sure as hell hope you'll look into, because it's the American public needs to know that, and it's just wrong. It is wrong on so many levels. Hunt, your reaction?
Well, I mean, I think I said 20 minutes ago, we've seen, somebody's already got this T-shirt, right? I mean, so we've encountered, it's a fact that there is a precedent, not on this topic, but on other topics relating to the global war on terrorism, where telecommunications companies were unlawfully working with either the National Security Agency or some other signals intelligence group within that community to, yes, perform what is functionally a warrantless surveillance that does not comply with constitutional mandates and does not comply with the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. So the article obviously is suggesting that is happening with respect to the program. So I can tell you that we already know the outcome of this. It's not legal if it's happening. So there's no secret law. The agencies within the government, I don't care what three-letter agency it is, doesn't get to make up their own law. They have to operate within the boundaries and the guidelines of the laws of their enabling statutes. So no, there's no actual legitimate secret law that would allow or permit a FISC, or Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, which are the same Article 3 judges that are in your districts across the country. So the federal judges that sit on the bench all over the country. So the FISA court is not some special court that exists like in the back room of Washington, D.C. Your Article 3 judges serve on the FISA court and they rotate. So the FISA judges will rotate throughout the country. One day it may be this handful of judges spread around, the other it's another handful. It's meant to do that so that these judges who oversee these very sensitive warrants that deal with domestic surveillance are doing so fairly. Ostensibly they're always changing so that it's, you can't homebrew somebody with the same judge over and over. The process is supposed to work that way. So if it's not working that way, it's illegal. Okay? It's illegal, and it's an illegal warrantless wiretap. And the Department of Justice if they knew about such warrantless wiretap, would have an obligation to investigate and convene a grand jury with respect to an illegal power being used. That's the way it should work in this country, if that's happening. So, Matt, I hope that's not happening, because if it is, somebody within the Department of Justice's National Security Division needs to not take a lunch break tomorrow and do something about that.
Yeah,
it is something that we've heard before, and have a limited capacity to investigate. But should it come out publicly that that's happening, that's different. Now, constitutional violations under Section 1983 have occurred, and somebody's going to get sued.
Well, I certainly hope Congress will look into this. I don't gamble at all, but I can tell you, I would gamble my house on the truth about this. I can't tell you how I know it, and what multiple highly placed sources told me, but it is going on, and it is one of the mechanisms they use to conduct the whistleblower retaliation. This is part of how they find out who is leaking or who is thinking about whistleblowing. This is the mechanism, this cancerous mechanism that the Pentagon is using, and it's illegal. And as you say, the Department of Justice needs to look into this. Ivan, your thoughts?
Well, paired what Hunt said, but just add maybe that, look at the moral baseness of this. It's there is no democracy. I mean, I do think that appeals to morality make sense, and we can talk about law and the FISA courts, and that's what Hunt said is 100% accurate. But to those who are using the foreign, right, underline the word foreign, Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA, to spy on American citizens with no connection to foreign intelligence agencies is absurd. I don't know what this exception is, but I suspect it's illegal. But I also think beyond just being illegal, it is immoral. And it's just simply immoral. American citizens have the right to be free of government surveillance, except under the conditions of a valid warrant. Whatever this supposed exception is to FISA, let's talk about it. Let's find out what it is. Let's get to the bottom of it. Let's litigate it. But those people who are acting on this, just like they did, 20 years ago when we were dealing with surveillance by the government, after 9/11, little different circumstance there. You can somewhat understand at least some of the motivation. I'm not excusing it. I'm just saying it was, a very chaotic time. But this is just entirely unacceptable, and we need to get to the bottom of it. But it's your country, right? I forget who said it, but I think it's. Sorry, I'm just blanking right now. But it's your country. Either you fight for it or you lose it. And these acts need to be challenged and taken very seriously.
Absolutely. So I recently interviewed Matthew Pines, security analyst, intelligence analyst, Matthew Pines, a few days ago, and we will be posting that interview shortly. And one of the things that I brought up to Matthew is there was a statement by the Secretary of the Air Force, Frank Kendall. I think it was about a year, maybe 2 years ago, where he was on Good Morning America, and he was asked about UAP, and he basically said, it's real. And then he goes, well, this doesn't seem to be any sort of national security threat. So we really don't need to worry about it. So, so here you have the Secretary of the Air Force, Frank Kendall, jeopardizing our nation's national security with this asinine statement that he knows is a flat-out lie. The Secretary of the Air Force, Frank Kendall, is lying to Congress, he's lying to the American people, and he's lying to everybody watching this show, saying that this is not a national security issue. It's not a potential national security threat. So again, Shellenberger elaborates a bit on this exact same subject in his article, where he says, quote, report describes various incidents found in the human intelligence databases. One involved orbs surrounding and forcing an F-22 out of its patrol area. The F-22 broke trajectory and attempted to evade, but was intercepted and boxed in by approximately 3 to 6 UAPs, according to the report. Quote, one UAP maneuvered within 12 meters to the area directly starboard of the cockpit. There, the UAP established a rigid spatial relationship with the F-22, maintaining its exact position and orientation parallel with the F-22's cockpit, despite multiple evasive rolls and maneuvers. Surrounded by the presumed hostile UAPs, the F-22 was forced out of the mission area under the escort of the UAP formation, close quote. In another incident, Shellenberger notes, the crew of a Navy aircraft carrier watched a quote, small orange-red sphere rapidly descend from a high altitude to 100 to 200 yards directly above the flight deck of the aircraft carrier. Didn't list the aircraft carrier, CDN. The UAPs appeared to emit a soft orange-red light, which bizarrely did not illuminate the ocean or the flight deck of the carrier, despite the visual appearance of intense luminosity. I've seen this myself firsthand. The surface of the UAP was observed to be dynamic, roiling like the surface of a sun. Again, to both of you, I don't know. To me, this seems like a national security threat. And to have the Secretary of the Air Force or the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, or Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, or Ronald Moultrie tell you that there is no significant security threat is the most asinine thing I've ever seen. Why those folks are in office, why they are holding these positions when they are overtly jeopardizing the national security of the United States is beyond me. Ivan, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, go back to what Lue says. He says, it's the potentiality is determined whether something is a threat by a combination of intent and capability. Now, intent, I don't think we know. I can't say that. That's just, I don't know. I don't know that anybody has, confirmed a thought about that. But capability is certainly illustrated by taking the most advanced fighter we have, the F-22 air superiority role, and apparently doing quite the dance with it. That is a capability that, while I respect all those top gun guys who seemingly are a few feet away from the other plane to do what was done there, it's just an incredible capability. Obviously, that F-22 fighter, hopefully the pilot, resolved that issue and went back home. It doesn't suggest that he was harmed or she was harmed. But nevertheless, that tremendous capability, the transmedium capabilities, the low observability, and so on, a rapid acceleration. I mean, these are things that we should demand answers to. It they show these capabilities, whether or not there is hostility implicit within them. The F-20. Why is it flying next to an F-22 for that matter? Right? Look, that tells you they're curious. I just think that it's obvious we have a circumstance which, even if there's not, even if it didn't bring it down, those are very concerning things. Those are extremely worrisome, and we need to look into it with an open mind.
Hunt, your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I mean, why don't I just oversimplify it with an example? I mean, Matt, I mean, I assume you live in a nice neighborhood with your family. Let's just assume that for the purposes of my question, okay? If I told you that 2 blocks from your home at some intersection, that one pedestrian was killed a week at that intersection, is that information that you'd like to know?
Absolutely.
I mean, I've got to assume that's information you'd like to know. Okay. Why would you like to know that information? Well, because you may walk in your neighborhood with your kids or with your spouse. You may drive there and think that there's something wrong. You need to be more careful. There's 100 reasons why you would want to know that information, right? I didn't ask you, is somebody dying there once a week? I just said, if somebody was, would you like to know that information? Okay, because that affects your life. And then I can ask, okay, whose responsibility is it to provide that safety information to you? And most people would not say necessarily their neighbor or their drone camera. They would say they're the local government or the agencies responsible for that. What I'm trying to demonstrate that the job of government, nowhere, anywhere that I can think of at all, even one example, is to conceal danger from the public. If there's a danger to the public, the specific function of government at all levels is to disclose that danger. Okay? Like there are billions of dollars in federal agencies who only exist to make things safer for the public. I can think of no other example where their existence is to conceal danger and make it less safe. So,
or to make light of it.
You know, or you know, and to the point that, you know, the response you get from the safety notion is that, well, you know, people will freak out. I mean, I really can't stand that argument. You know, my mother went to public school in South Florida in the 50s when some miles off the coast of that shoreline were nukes placed at South Florida, and she has vivid memories of doing nuclear attack drills underneath the little desks in her classroom as a young child, because the imminent threat of nuclear attack was talked about and performed every single day. These are little children who were said, the nukes are coming, you have to get under your desk, right, during the Cuban Missile Crisis. So if the children can do nuclear attack drills in elementary school, I'm pretty sure the larger public can handle the stuff flying around, you know, without the need for unelected folks to tell them they're all stupid or too scared or whatever the dumb reason is. It really does not make any sense. And if there's a danger, the role of government in this form is not to conceal it, but to disclose it. Because government does not conceal dangers. They exist to inform the public. That fundamental truth exists in every facet of the government. To say that should be suspended here for some reason is insane. And I think, you know, for the lawyers that listen, that litigate, you know, a lot of times what we're doing as litigators is shining light on this crap, you know. And so what I would suggest to some folks is, I am persuaded that there is something to shine the light on this topic, because if they're concealing a risk to folks, you know, it's our job to go find it, not to let them conceal it further.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of concealing, because we know that's what the Pentagon does, we know that is what the CIA does. I want to bring up this quote from a friend of our show, Christopher Sharp, who does excellent journalistic work from the Liberation Times. So Chris reached out to Pentagon Public Affairs Officer Susan Goff, and she said, quote, "The Department of Defense has no record, present or historical, of any type of sap called Immaculate Conception. I would add that my sources," and then Chris says, "I would add that my sources say otherwise." Now, notice Sue Goff did not say unacknowledged saps. And Sean Munger, one of your fellow attorneys, added this. So Bob, no, this was from Bob Pliskin. Twitter user Bob Pliskin said, "Ask them to provide you a list of all USAPs. They don't have one. The person you spoke to does not have access and therefore will never answer accordingly." So, you know, right there, the Pentagon, they're lying. You know, it's just what they do. And
they're not going to acknowledge this. Yeah. Certainly, I mean, the fact that they've taken, it's peculiar to me that they would even take to Twitter or however it is she issued your statement. I don't know. You know, look, it's one of those things. You know, that old phrase, "Who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes?" And that's kind of how I see it. You know, this is deceptive. It's dishonest. I assume that that's the correct name, Immaculate Constellation. And the Pentagon is not being truthful in its representations. They've dismissed everything. Everything is a balloon. Everything is a mirage. Everything is sun glinting off of something. At this point, it's just too late for them, at least for certain members like Susan Goff, to regain their credibility. And so it's nonsense.
It is nonsense. Gentlemen, how can folks follow your work at UAP Disclosure Fund and Disclosure I'm
Advocacy
tired. Exactly, yes. Sorry, it's been a long day. How can folks follow your work?
Well, for UAPDF, we're on X or Twitter, however you want to call it. I'm at Ivan_Hannell, Hannel, on Twitter. And Disclosure Advocacy Group, its Twitter is up there. I'm sorry, I don't remember it right now, so I'm going to apologize to some of our attorneys. But once we get it turned on, we'll let everybody know. I think this is the time. I think it's important for your viewers to start following. And I apologize again for not knowing precisely the Twitter handle for Disclosure Advocacy Group, but we will know it shortly, I'm sure.
No problem.
But we will, but follow these groups, support them, become proponents of disclosure. I know all of your viewers are certainly proponents, but it takes more effort to actually, not just tweet, but tweet at your representatives, make an occasional phone call, send something in writing. If we can all coalesce and maybe simultaneously begin engaging in campaigns to target particular representatives and their staff, I think that might be, a way of focusing a bunch of lasers onto one beam. And so that's another perhaps goal for us as a community is to converge upon our communication. So we put a lot of pressure all at one place, and sometimes that kind of leverage moves things along. So for everybody at Disclosure Advocacy Group and of course UAPDF, this community is a strong one. It has more power than it realizes. The journey that we're on is a good one. I think history will judge us well, and at the very least, we're trying to do an important thing, which is uphold you, Matt, as part of the press, us, as sort of members of the judiciary within our own individual states. We're trying to move this process forward and preserve our democracy. This is really what it's about. It's about preserving, this union, and and the rights that are embedded within it. So I thank you for this opportunity to share, and certainly kudos to Michael Shellenberger. I don't know how to reach him, but if you're hearing me, Michael, in some way, I definitely want to be in touch with you. Fantastic journalism, and much respect.
Thank you. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. And I look forward to seeing what is next. This will be one of this thing has finally reached critical mass. And if the Pentagon and the CIA thinks this is it, they're in for a rude awakening. Trust me.
America can handle the truth, just like Lue said. America can handle the truth. Let's retweet that. Let's get that. That's our slogan. We can handle that. Whatever it is, whether it's an ontological challenge, a physical challenge, whatever the outcomes are, Americans can. We've survived so much. This is a great country. We can do it together.
Absolutely, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it,
folks. Look, as I mute their Zooms, this article should really open people's eyes to the fact that we have been lied to for a very, very long time. Our military leadership, our military political leadership, our military industrial complex has been lying to Congress and all of us for a very long time. Our democracy hinges on a functional legislative branch. Our democracy hinges on a legislative branch that has oversight of the executive branch, not the other way around. Our democracy is based on all of them working for us, working for the American taxpayer. We do not work for Lockheed Martin. We do not work for Northrop Grumman. We do not work for BAE Systems. We do not work for Aerospace Corporation. We do not work for Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. We do not work for the Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks. They work for us. Now, you have to ask yourself, what kind of democracy, what kind of leaders in our democracy, what kind of senior executive service level people go out of their way to hide something so massive from Congress? Ask yourself why a small cadre in our government decided to take this whole thing, in particular the UAP Crash Retrieval Program, classify it under the 1954 Atomic Energy Act, classify it as classified nuclear material and special nuclear material, why they classify it in the Department of Energy under those classification mechanisms, why they would classify it as restricted data and formally restricted data. Why they would take the entire crash retrieval program and stick it under the Atomic Energy Act of 1954, where any engineers or government workers that leak that information are subject to penalties under I think it's the 1910 U.S. Espionage Act, which of course is under the penalty of death. Now, I believe the only time that capital punishment has been exacted was on the Rosenbergs. But why did they stick that under the Department of Energy, under transclassified nuclear information? I'll tell you why. They did it to hide it from Congress. They did it to hide it from every single member of Congress, regardless of committee chairmanship. They did it to hide it from all of you in Congress. That is why they did it. They knew, the Pentagon knew, if they took these unacknowledged special access programs and intelligence controlled access programs and they stuffed it in the DOE as transclassified foreign nuclear information, you would not have access to it. They did it to hide it from you. They did it to lie to you. That is why they did it. Why is it classified under, Executive Order 13526, under the executive branch? Again, they do this to hide it from all of you in Congress so you don't know what is going on. So you cannot legislate because they're lying to you. They are hiding from you what you should know. Americans cannot expect all of you in Congress to legislate on behalf of the American people when the Pentagon, when the CIA, when the National Security Agency, we know they're watching, are lying to your face. Congress, when you get people like Ronald Moultrie and others testifying in front of Congress and testifying in front of you in front of Congress, when you do not put them under oath, guarantee it, they are lying to your face. It's un-American. It's wrong. And you have to ask yourself, what kind of country do we live in when they are, as Hunt pointed out, would you want a government to hide that you're not safe? If you had, God forbid, a serial killer running around your neighborhood, you would want to know about it. You would want the police, you would want the city to tell you about the existence of that threat. That threat may never show up on your door. But I don't know about you, but I would want to protect my wife. I would want to protect my children. I would want to make choices about my daily life to maximize the chances of protecting my family from that threat. So, I'm speaking to you, Secretary of Air Force Frank Kendall. I'm speaking to you, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. I'm speaking to you, Undersecretary or Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks. Your behavior, all of you are jeopardizing the welfare, the safety of every citizen of the United States, every man, woman, and child, when you are lying to Congress about this, when you are lying to the American public. It's abhorrent. You swore to protect the Constitution of the United States, but all you're protecting are your pockets. You're protecting the job waiting for you at Lockheed Martin. So when Lloyd Austin, when you're out of here and you punch out and you're looking for your nice cushy job at Lockheed Martin or whatever, the last thing you're going to want to do is stand up to the military industrial complex. Why? Because you, sir, are part of the problem. Anyone involved in this, in hiding it, in squirreling it away, in concealing it from Congress and the American people, you are the problem. Flat. Full stop. You're jeopardizing the safety of our citizens. You are jeopardizing the safety of our men and women that wear the uniform. What is also abhorrent? Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, Secretary of Air Force Frank Kendall, whoever's running the Directorate of Science and Technology and the CIA Office of Global Access, Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks, who, oh, by the way, you're one of them. You're one of the gatekeepers. How abhorrent is it, and how do you look at yourself in the mirror as an American? Think of yourself as an American. When all of you engage in illegal operations to throw whistleblowers under the bus, men and women who have served this country. How do all of you in the CIA that are hiding, that have hidden the issue of Havana syndrome, all of you in the CIA that have stuffed Havana syndrome in the Department of Energy under transclassified foreign nuclear information, how do you look at yourself in the mirror when you know that you're putting these whistleblowers, when you're throwing them under the bus, people that, men and women who have served our country in various three-letter agencies that are suffering the physical effects of Havana syndrome or suffering the physical effects of being in close proximity to UAP, people, men and women that have the physical scars to carry with them their entire life, that affects their livelihood. How abhorrent is that when all of you, Secretary of the Air Force Frank Kendall, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks, retaliates against whistleblowers? What kind of country do you think you're part of? Because it sure as hell isn't America. How can you look at yourself in the mirror? How can you look at your kids in the face and know that you're running this like some mafia? It was shared recently with me, one of the potential retaliatory measures that was in the works against some whistleblowers. And I have to tell you, it made me want to go to the bathroom and vomit. So those of you that think there's nothing to this in terms of retaliation against whistleblowers, I can tell you that it's real. And I can tell you that it's scary as hell. And I can tell you that it's un-American. And when I heard the details, it made me sick to my stomach. And it made me ask myself, what kind of country have we become when that kind of stuff is going on? What kind of country have we become when the CIA Office of Global Access runs groups of rogue JSOC operators to go and physically retaliate against people and threaten them? That's not America. That's not any democracy. It's not even humane. It's the most abhorrent sense of humanity that I can possibly think of. And all of you in the Pentagon that have been running this whole thing and that continue to lie, just flat out bold-faced lie when everybody knows you are lying. Hell, your wife and kids probably even know it, or your husbands. They probably know you're lying about all of this. How can you look at yourself in the mirror and call yourself an American when you engage in these tactics? It's wrong. And members of Congress, it is high time, because we sure as hell can't trust the executive branch to fix this. It doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican. This has gone on for a long time. All of you in Congress, it is time to take your power back. It is time to take your power back from an executive branch that doesn't give a damn about the legislative branch. They do not give a damn what you think. So much so that they continually lie to you about these unacknowledged special access programs and unacknowledged controlled access programs. This is what they do. This is a feature, not a bug. You have people that say, well, you know what? Maybe the Pentagon is telling the truth. Maybe Susan Goff, when she trots out there and says, oh, there's nothing to see here. Maybe when Ronald Moultrie goes and testifies and says, oh, there's nothing to see here. Maybe when Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, who worked for Arrow and continues to spread propaganda on behalf of the Pentagon, even though he's working for the Department of Energy, maybe they're telling you the truth. Maybe there really is nothing to see here. Maybe these pilots and people in the intelligence various agencies and FBI and other three-letter agencies that encounter these craft of non-human origin. Maybe they're full of it. Maybe they're imagining it. Maybe David Grush just decided to make all this stuff up. Maybe David Grush decided to, just get in front of Congress and perjure himself. Maybe these pilots who operate our nation's most expensive flying machines, who have literally tens of millions of dollars in training invested in them. Maybe they're just seeing balloons. Maybe they're just seeing seagulls. Give me a break. You know damn well they're seeing what they're seeing. You know that they are. And there's a long history of the Pentagon lying to Congress. There's a long history of the Pentagon lying to the American public. They lied about Gulf War syndrome. They lied about systemic sexual assault. They lied about Agent Orange. They lied about Gulf War syndrome. They lied about Havana syndrome. They're lying about Havana syndrome. Whistleblower attorney Mark Zaid in Washington, very famous U.S. attorney, has uncovered evidence that the CIA is actively lying to other agencies about Havana syndrome. He has the evidence. He's presenting it to members of Congress in a skiff. Good people do not throw away their careers or perjure themselves in front of Congress or put their families at risk for some kind of circle jerk, as Sean Kirkpatrick would like you to think. Just think about it. That does not happen. So when you hear Sean Kirkpatrick or Mick West or these other folks, or the Pentagon for that matter, saying, well, these guys are just misidentifying things. Really? You really think we are that stupid? I think they think if they repeat a lie enough over and over and over again, people will believe it. But we are smarter than that as a nation. We care about our nation more than to believe that. At the end of the day, these folks must be held accountable. Now, I do believe that much of this was probably based in very good reasoning. It was at the height of the Cold War. People didn't know what these things were doing. But the people that are directly jeopardizing your national security, I'm talking about Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. I'm talking about the Secretary of the Air Force, Frank Kendall. I'm talking about the people in the CIA, leadership of the CIA. They are jeopardizing all of you, your safety at home, because they are not telling you the truth. Now, the only way that is going to change is for all of you at home to contact your lawmaker and demand the passage of the UAP Disclosure Act of 2024 for the National Defense Authorization Act. This is critical. This is really the best path forward to pulling this out of the shadows. And it's time. America can handle it. Humanity can handle it. We cannot keep going down this destructive path. What the Pentagon is doing, what the CIA is doing, is nothing short of a malignant cancer. It is a cancer on the fabric of this country. It is a cancer on the fabric of our democracy. And people like Lloyd Austin, Kathy Hicks, Secretary of the Air Force Frank Kendall, and others, especially the deputy level folks. Folks, if you want to know who the gatekeepers are, the true gatekeepers are, the leadership knows about it. But go and look who has deputy under their name. Go and look at those lifers that have deputy as part of their title. I guarantee you, you're looking at the right people. So all of those folks that are continuing this lie to all of you are endangering your national security. They are endangering your family. We have a constitutional democracy. But when you have members of the Department of Defense and the intelligence community behaving as if our country is a military junta, that is not what our founding fathers intended for our children. And you have to ask yourself, is this the country that you want to leave for your children? Do you really want a country that is in the back pocket of aerospace corporations? Do you really want aerospace corporations such as Lockheed Martin, such as Northrop Grumman, who are holding on and reverse engineering technology of non-human origin? Do you really trust them to do the right thing for the country? Do you really think these defense contractors, and maybe even Elon Musk, are putting country before corporation? This is this kind of erosion of moral fabric that attorney, Lue Elizondo's attorney, Ivan Hannell, spoke about. This is the kind of erosion of our democracy when you have these aerospace corporations, these defense contractors, calling the shots. When you have defense contractors that may be more concerned about their stock prices and their stockholders and their foreign holdings than keeping national security secrets away from foreign adversaries. It's a perversion of capitalism that none of us intended for capitalism to be. It's a perversion of democracy when you have board members or senior leadership or C-suite people from Lockheed Martin leaving Lockheed Martin and becoming the Secretary of Defense, who's going to send them sweetheart contract deals. And then when that Secretary of Defense exits the Pentagon, when the administration that they're working for changes over, guess what? They're going right back into the place they left to line their pockets like fat cats. While all of us at home struggle to pay our taxes and put food on the table. This is this cancerous perversion of democracy that is not about to come. It is here. It is right now. This is what we are dealing with. And this is what we have in our foreseeable future unless all of you at home decide to do something about it. Decide to call your lawmakers and say enough is enough. There is no reason the Pentagon, the CIA, the executive branch cannot come clean with the American public and the world for that matter about our true place in the universe. The cat is out of the bag. Everybody knows you are lying to all of us. We all know we are not alone. We all know that there is something here. There are many things here that you are not wanting to admit to. So when our government, whose duty is to protect the safety of the United States, the physical safety of the United States and its citizens, is failing, that is abhorrent. When you have UAPs disabling our land-based strategic nuclear deterrent, tampering with it, retargeting it, and it's been going on for literally decades. UAPs flying above Minuteman III ICBM, nuclear-tipped ICBM squadrons and disabling an entire flight of missiles. And the Secretary of the Air Force, Frank Kendall, goes on national TV and tells you that this is not a national security threat? You gotta be kidding me. That, my friends, is a failure in leadership. That, my friends, is a failure in a person's moral compass. That, my friends, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathy Hicks, the 50 or so senior executive service level people that are gatekeeping this, all of that all of you that are doing and hiding this, it's abhorrent and it's un-American, and it's time that it come to a damn stop.